Good evening everyone and welcome back to my channel. It's good to see you all. I hope you're doing well. In today's video, we are going to be reviewing the first 3 books of the Tower of Babel series by Josiah Bancroft. The 4th and final installment in the series is due to come out this year in November, so I think it's a good time to catch up on my reviews for the series and talk about my feelings. I hope you enjoy this video, and if you've read the books already, I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments, so yeah, let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching. Nary a week goes by that I don't see some kind of post on r/fantasy about Senlin Ascends, and for good reason. I read the first book back in July of last year, June or July, about a year ago now, and I absolutely loved it. I could understand why everyone enjoyed it so much because it is such a breath of fresh air in the fantasy genre. It really doesn't rely on, the typical tropes like the hero's journey, though technically I guess it is a hero's journey. The main protagonist, Senlin, is not the typical hero that we usually see who's kind of like a teenager, farmer. Senlin himself is actually a school teacher. He recently got married to Maria and they're on honeymoon to this mythical place called the Tower of Babel. As it turns out, as soon as they arrive, they end up getting separated, and this place is massive. Like, the Tower of Babel is truly one of the most spectacular settings I've ever read about. Obviously, there's millions and millions of people in this tower and in the surrounding area, and so when Senlin gets separated from Maria, the chances of him reuniting with her are pretty slim. Nonetheless, Senlin sets out to find her and he enters the tower, and the first book basically follows him as he ascends and looks for his wife. If you're thinking to yourself at this point, that doesn't seem like a plot that would last for 4 books, you would be right. While the first book does mainly focus on Senlin and his inner conflict and his, just feelings of doubt and worry over missing his wife, the second book in the series, The Arm of the Sphinx, kind of decenters the narrative from Senlin and focuses on the secondary characters. I actually think that's one of the best parts of this series, is the fact that it's 4 books long. It doesn't follow that typical trilogy sort of rising action, falling action, 3-part, what's it called? 3-act story beats, you know what I'm saying. It doesn't follow that typical structure, and I think it works to a certain extent. I have some issues with it when it comes to the 3rd book, but especially in that first and second book, the heavy lifting that the middle book often has to do in a trilogy is split between 2 books, so you can kind of take some time to take some detours and really set up a lot of threads that will pay off in the last book. I do want to take a step back and talk about the characters for a little bit. I mentioned that Senlin, the main character, is a headmaster, or he was a headmaster, and he really starts off this series as this very straight-laced, very, just the kind of person that you would imagine a school teacher would be like. Always follows the rules, doesn't like to do too much crazy stuff, and is just pretty nerdy and boring, I guess, for the lack of a better word. It's almost like a corruption arc, but not really. As the series progresses, his morality starts to change and he becomes more desperate in certain areas, and he does things to protect his friends and his family that he probably wouldn't have done at the beginning of the series. And yeah, Senlin is a fantastic main character. However, I do think that the secondary characters are a mixed bag. I like some of them more than others, and I think that probably the second best character in this series is Edith Winters, who is quite similar to Senlin. She comes to the tower and she's been caught up in the machinations of this massive tower, and really she's just trying to survive. And I think that her relationship to Senlin is one of the cornerstones of the books, especially in the Hod King, the 3rd book. She really comes into her own and she has this very interesting inner conflict. It's one of those situations where she knows what the right thing to do is and she doesn't fully trust everyone around her. One of the aspects I love about Edith is her femininity. In the 3rd book especially, I think that Bancroft kind of takes on the concept of femininity at 2 varying degrees of success, but with Edith, I think he really does do a fantastic job of portraying a woman who is conflicted and just a three-dimensional character. I bring up the concept of femininity because in the Hod King specifically, one of the secondary characters, Volita, has a much bigger role to play, and I personally found that her section of the Hod King, the third book, was just a drag to get through, and I think that some of the commentary that Bancroft makes with her character or through her character just felt very one-dimensional and one-note. And for example, she goes on this rant about makeup, and within the context of the story, I could understand where she was coming from and kind of critiquing this strange, very vain society and superficial society. And again, I'm trying to be vague to avoid spoilers, but you know, that commentary that he makes through her character of like, I don't wear makeup, so I'm special, it just felt very one note to me. And just in general, her character to me comes off very manic pixie dream girlish, and more than that, her character goes through certain traumas that I don't think are fully unpacked in a way that I think they should be. Maybe that's something that Bancroft is saving for the last book to fully explore, so maybe that criticism of mine will be addressed. So back to talking about plot for a little bit. There is so much unpredictability, and that's probably the best aspect of the series, is just not knowing what's going to happen next. I think the first two books do that fantastically, and then the third book falters a bit when it comes to plot and just structure and pacing. Reading the Hod King, it felt like every time you took a step forward, you took 3 steps backward. And it was just very frustrating as a reader, because I think that a sense of progress is what every reader craves. It's kind of the currency of reading, right? Like, you want to feel like there's some progress being made as you continue reading a book. Otherwise, it just feels like you're not going anywhere and those pages don't feel earned. And unlike the unpredictability of the first 2 books that kept me on the edge of my seat, it just felt kind of boring. I will say, however, that the third book does end up redeeming itself, and specifically the conclusion and the way that things wrap up, it was really, really satisfying. And I feel like Bancroft did a fantastic job of really setting the stage and the key players for the last book. Overall, my impression of the series is that it's a very smart sort of social commentary on capitalism and industrialism and the nature of progress and the duplicitousness of human nature. And I'm sure there's a lot of elements to the story that just completely go over my head, because I'm not like the most well-read person when it comes to history or stuff like that. I'm sure there's a lot of references that I don't get, and I think that this is a very well-crafted story overall. You know, I don't think this is a series for everyone. If you're looking for, you know, the next Wheel of Time or like Malazan or something like that, you're gonna be disappointed. It is very much like sort of a character study and like social commentary, more so than epic fantasy. And in fact, there's not even a lot of magic in this series, if any. I'm not super familiar with the genre, but I would call this series steampunk more so than epic fantasy. But if you're in the mood for something different, maybe you could give this series a shot. And so yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. Again, I'm trying to get better at reviewing entire series, so if you have any recommendations or comments on my review and you would like me to clarify certain things, I would be happy to do that in the comments down below. And yeah, let me know, do you think that this is a series you would be interested in, or is it a pass for you? It's been a pleasure talking about books with y'all, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.